what would a typical day be like then for an adjuster just going out doing a claim? What's it like? What is the how do you know where you're going? Do you call the people? What do you do?
You got to have some type of organization, some type of plan ahead of time. Plan for it, because it's just not as simple as getting up in the morning and getting in your vehicle and calling the homeowner and going out saying, I'm coming here, and then you go outside the house, get on the roof, walk around, and you leave, and say I'll call you in a week or two.
You have to get on roofs?
If you're in the wind side, if you're doing property, I guess, as far as estimating. But you got to plan your day. You got to call, and you got to account for, there's lots of variables that come into play, not just doing the inspection, but drive time, talking, explaining to the policyholder while you're there.
Traffic.
Mm-hmm. And amongst it may take shorter time than what you plan for. It may take longer. And then if you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 inspections that day, then you just make sure you
So walk me through an inspection, Todd. When you do an inspection.
Okay,
David, you call the people, you say, I'm coming out there at 7 a.m. I'm going to get on your roof or whatever, and then what?
Well, it all starts with the IA firm. So we're going to get our claims, and they're going to send us the loss notice or the first notice of loss for the insured. So that's going to have the phone number. We've got to make contact with them. I know property FEMA requirements are probably pretty close to the same. You want to make those phone calls within your first 24 hours. And then that kind of gives you the balance of what you need to do and how you need to do it. So if you've got 60 claims, you're not going to call 60 people in 24 hours. But you also got to figure out where these claims are. You got to figure out your mapping, just like David was saying. You got to organize. You got to figure this out fast so you understand it. So a typical day on, property, he just mentioned 6 to 8 claims a day. I don't advise that at flood at all, because you're dealing with the whole entire house. You're dealing with all their contents that were damaged from flooding. So it's a little bit different in that case, but it all starts still with that first phone call. You got to set that first phone call. You got to map that. One of the things that you got to be very keen on is what they're saying also as a policyholder. You're going to detect their stress level. You're going to detect their concerns. You're going to see all that. So you need to know how to balance all that within that first conversation. Don't just say, hey, I'm the adjuster. I'm going to be out there in 5 minutes, or, I'm going to be out there in a week. You can't do that in this industry, not anymore anyways. So now you got to show the empathy. You got to be kind to them. You got to understand their loss, and then you got to set your schedule and stuff. And, again, like you just said, 7 o'clock in the morning, yeah, that's a typical day. Some people start earlier, it depends on what time. I've been out on my first claim at 6 o'clock in the morning.
I've been out there when the sun's coming up.
Yeah, I've been out the same thing. And
but
then
I had to get up at 2 to drive 3 hours to get there, which normally only takes about 45 minutes because of traffic during a catastrophe. So, yeah.
That happens.
So then what happens, though, with the inspection now? So now you've made the phone call, you've scheduled your inspection, you're going out there at 7 a.m., it's that easy. What do I do? Do I just take pictures and then go home?
Again, it depends what you're doing. If you're doing property, it's going to be different.
Let's stick
if
to
you're
property.
doing flood, it's going to be different.
Well, they're kind of the same because they're both damage. So you're photographing damage, right?
Right.
You obviously have to know how much carpet you're going to replace.
Yeah, it depends on the scope, is what you
What's
just
the scope?
said. The scope of damage, meaning what's damaged.
What's damaged.
And
Okay.
what's covered. You've got to be able to, obviously you're going out there looking at everything and be able to determine what's covered, what's not, and what's damaged, and what's what they call long-term or maybe maintenance issues that may not be covered under the policy. And then you've got to be well-versed in the policy to be able to explain that to the homeowner.
So that's where the training comes in as well, as far as knowing what the insurance policy is going to cover.
Right.
You mentioned maintenance and wear and tear, so those are not covered in a standard insurance policy, or really any that I'm aware of.
They're not, and let's be honest, I'll just speak for myself, but I didn't know any better until I got into this business. Just hearing folks talk about insurance claims, and there's a fallacy as far as the adjuster don't want to pay for
Mm-hmm.
this or for that, and really that's the opposite of
It is.
what it is, right?
I
Because-
agree 100%
Why is
with
that?
that.
Yep.
The adjuster
a
does
great
want to pay
question.
for it. Why?
Well, because how do they make their money?
Right.
By what they write an estimate for,
Right.
right? So it's in their best interest. It's in everyone's best interest. We want to find coverage for the customer,
Right.
for the policyholder,
Right.
because it's the right thing. You know, the caveat to it is this how we get paid, you know, based on what we write. But you also have to, you know, you stand by the policy. And you got to be able to know the policy to do your job and have that conversation and just explain to the customer. There's ways, and so many, especially starting out new folks are scared to explain a denial or deny something. They'll just push it to the side and focus on this is what we can pay and this is what's covered and all this stuff. But, you know, the rot on the fascia, I'm not going to mention it, and maybe it's not going to go away. They're
But
going to ask you about it.
A new
Yep.
adjuster, they don't know. The policyholder comes in and says, well, you know, let's get this fixed. And then you're looking at it and you see that that's where the kid throws his baseball every day. And that's why there's dents in the garage
do
door.
that.
So
Right.
um,
Right.
that's not covered. But how do you know that?
It's
By
gonna-
knowing the policy?
Yes, and being able to, you've got to know where it is and point it out and put it in writing and explain it to the customer.
What if I don't know and I go ahead and say, yeah, we're going to pay for that? Then what?
Be
You
honest.
don't ever do that.
Be honest.
Be
And tell-
honest.
Hopefully,
I don't know I'm going to ask somebody if that's covered.
And I'm glad you say that, because what I was taught, the way I learned from other folks in the business is be honest. Don't just say, yeah, no, and it's not. If you don't know, I was taught and learned to say, you know what, let me check your policy and I'll get back to you.
Yep.
For all I knew before I started this is the policy was 1,000 pages and I don't know how to read any of it.
Right.
So they're going to go back and say, well, at least he's going to look in the policy and see. You come back and say, you know, after further review, which you did, and you asked for help, I got help, further review. Unfortunately, it's just not covered. This
Okay.
is where it is in the policy right here. It's not
Okay.
covered.
right. But you need to know how to decipher that too. You need to know what the damage is from the storm. Suppose you have wind and hail, whatever. You need to know how to decipher that damage versus, you know, or log floating into a garage door from flood damage, or was it something else that hit the garage door and they're just trying to claim that? You need to know how to look at all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes with, and I use this term loosely, experience. But how do you learn experience? By being out in the field. Unless
Yeah.
you know construction. By having that field of construction, you don't have to know construction. David didn't know construction. I only knew construction just because that's what I did just as a kid, just growing up. I used to go clean the houses, you know, for $50. So I had spending money, you know, so I learned, I got to listen to those guys. I got to learn what things were. But again, then I never used it. I was a Marine 20 years. I didn't, from high school age to 20 years later, I decided to become an adjuster.
Yep.
I didn't know what to do.
Right. You coming into this as a new person, you've got to be a sponge.
Yep.
You've got to
Learn.
You've got to be open to constructive criticism and asking questions. You know, one of the other things that I've learned is you can relate this to really anything, but ask the question and write it down, write the answer down in case it comes up again. If you don't remember, you can refer to it instead of just asking the same question over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
That's a retention thing that you need to fix or have in place.
I'll say one more thing too. Training is valuable. If the company that you're going to work for is there, train. Do it all. Take the time off.
Is it
do
expensive?
Some
I
can,
do have
some
a job.
can be, some can be cost effective. Some cannot be. I mean, it just depends on your time frame, what you're available. But here's why, and I leave this with this note: is nobody, you know, I knew how to climb a ladder, but I knew how to climb a ladder from
Yeah.
what? Watching my dad climb a ladder, and
Yeah.
me climbing a ladder, and jumping off my roof into the pool. You know, that's how I knew how to climb a ladder. I didn't know how to climb a ladder for a roof claim during Hurricane Katrina. You know, I walked up a blue roof fine. Guess what? I slid down the other side right off the roof. You know what? That's how I learned. I better not do that again. You know, I climbed a ladder and
Yeah, you don't want to do that on a claim on an inspection, though.
yeah. Well, I did it. And, you know, I learned, you know, I got a disability from the Marine, you know, from the Marine Corps. So I climbed a ladder, was stepping off the ladder, and my left leg gave out, and I fell back, and the ladder hit me in the head. Wow. You know, so, but I didn't know how to place my ladder on a roof properly. I didn't know there was ladder training out there, but there is. You've got to do that training. Otherwise, you're going to end up like me. Hurricane Katrina, I was in the hospital 4 times.
Wow.
All because of mistakes I made because I didn't know what to do.
Wow.
But I learned.
You know, going back to your point about training and the cost, it goes back to my thing is investing in yourself. You know, if this is what you really want to do, you have to look at the long-term benefits of it and what you're able to give back. You know, it's and get the short-term, the upfront cost. It doesn't really.
Well, you keep talking about the cost, and what are the costs? How long will it take me? Let's say that I decide, I want to do it, and I get the training, and then I spend the money, and I spend $500, and I don't know if that's a good representation of what will get me started, because I know I still have to have equipment. So let's just say that's on training and licensing. How long will that training take? And then when do I get a claim? And then what else do I need? How much? When am I going to see some money coming back to me?
You've got to it's all situational. You just don't fit into one mold. It depends on the event and the storm. But
what if there is none? And then I've invested $5,000 and keep getting trained, and I'm the most trained person out there.
Right. You've got to network and ask folks, where are they getting the work from? Where is the work? You know, the firm that you're on the roster for, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Call and ask. You know, call deployment, the HR, and say, do you have any work? Where is the work? What's it going to take for me to come work for you guys? What do I need to do? What are you looking for? Do I have the license for where the work is that you have now?
So if there's not a catastrophe, can I just do a claim?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. There's more than to be an insurance adjuster and to do this type of work. It just doesn't have to be a hurricane. There's catastrophes that happen all the time. Not just a hurricane. There's wildfires.
Yeah, look at what's happening in Hawaii.
Yeah,
a rainstorm, flooding all through Maui, shut down the airport, trees blown over everywhere, knocking out power, damaging houses because they're floating down the street.
Right. Look at the ice storm that went through Texas last year.
Yep.
Or this past year, whenever, I think it was last year. You know, I mean, that's not something that they predict, you know, a month in advance or 2 weeks in advance, prepare and evacuate. It was just a storm that went through, caused all that damage. In addition to that, think about it every day. For those out there that have a home or experienced a claim before, just like auto, you know, I mean, it could be something as simple as the supply line popping off the washing machine or the dryer. You know, you go out to dinner Friday night.
Yeah.
And you come home and there's water.
Overflow toilet.
Yeah.
So
3.5-year-old stuff down, stuffs Woody down the toilet, or Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
You know, put all their toys in there, and then you go and they flush the toilet or whatever, and you come back and there's water everywhere. It's like, oh boy.
And insurance will pay for that?
Possibly.
And they need an insurance adjuster to come and look at that, take pictures, and write an estimate for that.
Right.
Yep.
And then I would get paid to do that.
Yeah, that's a regular business or a daily claim.
A daily claim.
Depends on.
They're probably pretty common.
It happens all the time, every day.
Yeah.
All sorts of perils.
Geographical location of where you live, too. I mean, you don't have to work for CNC, let's say. You don't have to live here in Mobile, Alabama. You can live in any state, and you can have that state license in, like, Houston. You can have the Texas state license. You can live in Houston, still work for CNC, and handle daily claims for them with property.
Okay.
You can do that in any state. You know, it's just where you're doing. It's, again, I think one of the things that it starts with is application. Understand the application process. Contact that firm. contact HR, get all that stuff in, find out when their training is, find out if they have virtual training, whatever it is, on-site training, virtual training, and find out from them what your next step is to do. So you can make sure that you're resourceful to them so they can, properly. Also, when there's a storm or if there's a big catastrophe like you were talking about with hurricane, there might be an orientation that you need to go to get ready for that storm, or for that certain company that, like property, if you're working for a certain particular insurance company, there might be an orientation from that company for all the adjusters that are going to work those claims. So you just got to be, you got to understand all that. But the first point of contact is that firm. You got to call their HR. You got to fill out that application. You have to get on their roster, like David has mentioned. You can't just sit there and dream about it. You got to take that step. Look out for yourself.
The initiative, yeah. Just stay in front of them and ask them.
And then they will be able to guide me as far as how to get my license and what to do and the expenses and equipment I'll need and everything else.
Yeah, the support's there.
Because I know a lot about cars too.
Yeah.
So, there are auto adjusters out there that may be interested in getting into this. They don't know construction, but maybe they're interested in working
Well, it's just
a
like
hailstorm.
It's just like that guy you talked about. He repaired tires?
Yep.
And he said he wanted to do this. Guess what?
Yep.
I would have said, hey, call us, talk to whoever, and talk about auto adjusting. Why? Because you're already in that field. You know a lot about cars because you're replacing the tires, you're replacing the brakes. So focus on that. See where it leads you. Then you can move up to the other stuff, property, flood, whatever. You start somewhere where you're going to be flexible and going to know something.
And there's a test for the auto as well,
There is,
I assume.
depending on the carrier. They may have some type of certification or like you said, orientation or some type of training to go through, just to make sure you're up to speed and familiar with the way they handle claims and how they want their policyholders taken care of.
So how much would an adjuster basically make? Just a standard adjuster. Let's not even break them out into auto, property, or just what does an insurance adjuster make?
Well, it depends on if you're staff or if you're independent.
Okay.
What's it really? The independents, some make day rate. They're just paid a flat rate every day to go out.
How much?
And then some. It depends on how you negotiate with that particular firm that you're working for.
Okay.
Or the company, even in that case.
Right. There's fee schedules.
Okay.
That are involved, and you get a percentage of that. So the insurance company will say that, and it's tiered differently. Each one has their own, so you can't just say it's just this one fits for everything. But they have different tiers as far as the claims. If it's $0 to $5,000, they charge this much, and the adjuster gets a percentage of that fee that the firm charges the insurance company.
Okay.
So again, lots of variables in there, but it's tough to say.
50,000, 100,000.
I was going to say 45 to 65 is a good number, a good range. But there's folks out there that do this part time. They do it seasonal, and they budget their money, and they live that way. They work this storm for the first quarter, second quarter of the year. They don't work during the middle of the year, and then there's something that comes up at the end of the year, and they work that storm. So really, to each their own. But you can make a really good living at it. It just depends on, how much you want to work.
What's the high end potential earnings?
I've heard 250,000, 350,000
a year.
Yeah.
It depends. I think that really depends on your expertise. You're willing to learn. You're willing to.
Of course, yeah.
All those factors come
Right.
involved in that, and that could be a good wind adjuster or property adjuster that makes that with FEMA flood, depending on your level of certification with all that stuff. You can make more than that. It just depends. But you also got to understand that, even for property side, if you're not working those daily claims, there might not be a storm next year.
Right.
And if you're putting all your eggs in one basket, you got to be able to balance that.
Yeah.
for that time frame, because what are you going to do next year
Right,
when
that's a
there's
big
no
concern
storms?
for a lot
Oh,
of people. What do
huge.
you do? If there's no storm and you're not working a catastrophe, then can you get on just a daily and do just daily claims to kind of keep yourself going until the next event, or do you just stop, go get another job, and wait for the next big event?
For me, it goes back to each their own. But yeah, I mean, if there's no, when was it?
A lot
Back
of flexibility, though, with this
2017, there wasn't very many hurricanes, right?
Mm-mm.
And so, really, there were pipe bursts during the winter months, and freeze storms that carried a lot of folks through the year with that work. So,
What if I don't want to go?
you, you better look for the next. You can ask for if they have day claims, or you better look for something else.
You'd
to
better
keep
probably
you,
take that.
in the
Take that
meantime.
opportunity, right?
You know, I had a rule of thumb, and Will and Derek mentioned it from the first get. You know, they don't say no.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I tell you what, when I retired from the Marine Corps, I had that same philosophy. I'm not going to say no. But guess what? When I retired, 2006, there were no storms. 2006, 2007, I think the first one was 2008. Well, I continued my training. Again, I learned from Hurricane Katrina what I needed to do. So 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, I continued my training for my FEMA flood FCN card. So when I got that, I submitted that to that IA firm, and Tropical Storm Faye just happened to be hitting New
Wow.
York. And they says, hey, you ready to go? I says, yeah. And they says, okay, you got to be at Lake Mary, Georgia tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. I drove right through the center of Tropical Storm Faye. I watched an 18-wheeler overturn. But when I got there at 4 o'clock in the morning. I went to their orientation. The guy turned me around and sent me home. I got pneumonia while I was there because I stayed awake all night. And, you know, I didn't do anything. I had claims in my box. I didn't do anything for first 3 days except for call my policyholders and say, hey, when I'm available, I'll come and see you. And then my first inspection was with the company that I was working for at that time. And I didn't know how to do a flood claim. I'd only done property claim. That was back in 2005.
Wow.
Here it is, 2008. And I just remembered what I learned. Don't miss a thing. So this was my very first flood claim, and I didn't miss a thing. You know those little door things that's behind the door to protect it from hitting a wall? I even wrote that down, a door stop.
It counts.
I mean, it does. And he
If it's
goes,
damaged.
yeah. He goes, Todd, he goes, I can't believe it. He says, you're the first adjuster. You mentioned you got everything in that house. You didn't miss a thing. And that's my job. So, but I learned that job. I continued my training.
Sounds really challenging. So tell me some of your experience in the field, David, as far as where's the best place that you traveled? I know that in my travels, I've been all over the country, never out of the country, but every major catastrophic event, I've been to Los Angeles, New York, Miami, all over Kansas, Texas, everywhere. And there's so many things that always kept me going. The travel was really exciting. I'd never left Alabama until I was 18. I mean, I'd been to Florida, but just around. And then all of a sudden, I'm out in Denver. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And there's a different
Another
world.
country.
And that really, that was exciting. And then seeing the hail and the damage, and because now I'm thinking back to hail damage on roofs, just seeing, wow, hail will actually go through a roof. This is interesting. And hearing these people's stories, for me, it was the stories and knowing that I could help them. And when I didn't know the answer, I would tell them, I don't know, I'm going to find out, I'm going to help you. And I was always available to help them out. But those are a couple of big things that got me. How about you?
You mentioned hail, and you know years ago there was a hailstorm that went through Wiley, Texas, and within a week, another hailstorm went through the same area, and we're working claims, and like you said, I just didn't believe that hail went through the roof and punctured the roof.
Yeah.
It was in the damaged the coffee table
Yeah.
in the living room, and until you saw it, and it was almost softball size hail, and you're looking up, and it's like, wow,
Amazing.
how in the world did that happen? but it was real, you know. And these folks that's why they have insurance for the claims. But you know, something like that, we're all creatures of habit, right? And we're thrown out of a routine, and we not panic, but we don't know what to do. And from an adjuster standpoint, that's your job, is to coach them and lead them and reassure them that this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to go, and this is how we can help you. And so that was just an example of just an eye-opening experience for me, is being there and seeing that literally in person. And
Yeah,
like, man, this is
pretty amazing.
This is crazy.
What about you, Todd?
You know, I like traveling. I've always been traveling ever since I was growing up as a kid. So, I mean, I've seen the whole countryside, and plus with soccer and stuff. But one of my favorite storms, and again, I was new, was Tropical Storm Irene, Hurricane Lee, I think it was, or they might be different. I was sent up to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And I had to go look at a house that was on a river. Well, I got there with the policyholder, and I says, "Okay, sir, so where's your house?" And he goes, "Up there." His house was literally in a tree.
Wow.
All of his house was in a tree because the river got up 33 feet. So it took his whole house and put it in the top of that tree and everything. And I just was fascinated with that.
Yeah.
And one of the wife was there, and she was just crying away and everything. And I told her, I says, "Listen," I says, "I'm sorry for your loss, but you know what? I see your cement slab, or partial of your cement slab. But one thing I gave her, and I like doing this, and this brings up what David said. He likes helping people. I said, let's look through this tunnel. There's a light at the end of that tunnel. Just remember, everything that was damaged, you've lost everything. Your whole life has been changed, then upside down. All your history, everything you know is gone before your eyes. But tomorrow, or now that I've come out here, we get to start fresh. We get to rebuild. And there's a light at that end of the tunnel. Now you get a new step in life and face.
That's awesome.
And start over. And that brought that lady from tears to a smile, because she knew that she could start over.
Yep.
And that's the way I kind of felt.
That was heartfelt.
Yeah.
You feel that when you see when you see a slab, or when you see people in their car parked brushing their teeth at 6 a.m. in the morning because they don't have a home to live in. Yeah, it's heartfelt. You want to help them, and you will do everything that you can to help them. And that really drew me to this as well.
Right. And that's where it started when my house burnt down, or my house burnt up, not down. I mean, it was still erected as a rough shell. But I knew that I could start fresh. And that's, one of those things that I told back at the beginning of this podcast is, I wanted to change. I wanted to change the industry. I wanted to change how I was treated so I could treat other people with respect and show them that, hey, there is a future to this. There is something better. You can learn from this. And that's what I like about the job. I mean, I love it. It's everything I do. It's all I do full time.
Well, that was great, guys. I really appreciate the information there. There's so much more I wish we could have covered. I know we just got kind of conversational and started talking, but thanks for the information. Hopefully that'll help some folks, want to get involved in this business. It's been good to me for 33 years. I love it. I never wanted to do anything else. When my dad took me on my first claim, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And but appreciate y'all being here. Thanks, Todd.
Oh,
Thanks,
no,
David.
Great.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having us.
Okay.